This video is a part of the A to Z series of Python language where I go through all the built-in functions of Python starting with letter S with a description of how to use them. The imported library functions and classes are written using these built-in functions only. So you can consider this as a foundation of the entire Python language. If you have landed directly on this video, you can check out the entire playlist in the iCard above or through the link in the description. Otherwise, watch this video till the end as I will also give real project examples where these functions might be useful wherever I can. My name is Aditya Shenoy from Brainy Things, where I make programming simple and fun. YouTube statistics show that a small percentage of you who watch my videos are actually subscribed to this channel, so if you end up liking this video, please consider subscribing. It's free and you can always change your mind in future. The first function is the set function. Sets are mutable, unordered collections of unique elements. If we don't pass any parameter to this function, it will return an empty set like this. If we pass an iterable to this function, like this, it constructs a set out of all the elements inside the iterable, removing duplicates and not maintaining the order. But take a note that elements in the iterable should be immutable. So a mutable type like list, another set, etc. cannot be part of the set. So let's see. I'm passing a list in which an element is a list and other elements can be normal. It will raise type error, unhashable type list, because lists are mutable. If you want to use this, then you have to convert them to their mutable alternatives, tuples, frozen sets, etc. You can also use the set roster method like this to construct sets. So inside the curly brace, you type all the elements of the set separated by comma, and it will create a set out of all the elements like this. Alternatively, you can use set comprehension, which is just like the list comprehension but with curly braces. So x for x in range 10 will create a set of all the elements between 0 to 9. I have made a detailed video on list comprehension. You can check out the video in the iCard above. Set is a very powerful data structure. This is the prime option for any programmers who are trying to optimize their program for time complexity. This is because sets allow checking if the element is present in it or not in constant time, which takes linear time in sequences like lists or tuples. Also, set removes duplicates, so sets can be constructed to remove duplicates from an iterable. The next function is the set attribute function. This function is the complementary function to the get attribute function. To demonstrate this, I will create a custom class, my class, and I will create a class attribute name, and I will set this to a string Python, and I will print my class dot name, and it will print the Python string. It is normal. Now I can call the set attribute function. The first parameter will be the object whose attribute we are talking about. The second parameter is the name of the attribute inside a string. So in this case, name will be quoted inside a single quote or double quote, and the value that we want to set to this value. So I will set this to Brainy Things, and now if we print after the set attribute function call, the myClass.name has a value of Brainy Things. So this set attribute function call is equivalent to the statement myClass.name is equal to Brainy Things like this. This function can be used if you want to write a complete function oriented program instead of an object oriented program that uses dot operators like this. Otherwise, this function is not used much due to the presence of the dot operator. The next function is the slice function. It works exactly like the range function. If we pass just one integer parameter to this slice function, it will generate a slice object that starts with a none, that is the default value. We will see what default values are in just a minute, and the ending value is 4. 4 is not included in this slice range, and the default step value. We will also see what default step values are. If we want to change the start value, the default start value, we can pass two integer parameters, say 1 and 4 like this, and it will change the starting value of this slice range. So it starts with 1, ends at 4, and step value is again default. And to change the default step value, we can pass the third integer parameter. So I will pass 1, 10 and 2, and it will generate a slice object that starts with 1, ends at 10 and takes a step of 2. These slice objects can be passed as the index of a sequence. Slice objects are also generated when extended indexing syntax is used. Let's see it's working. First I will create a list that has elements between 0 to 8. 8 is not included, so it will have a value of 0 to 7 like this. Now to access the elements inside this list, we can use the square bracket, that is indexing, and we can pass an integer object inside this square bracket to access the element. So this is our original list and the first index element is 1. Here we are using a list whose elements are equal to its indices so that we can understand how this indexing and slicing works, but this can work for any type of list. Now you can pass the slice object that we generated above inside the square bracket like this. So I will pass 1 and 4 slice object, and as you can see, the list slice object that is returned is 1, 2 and 3. The start index is 1, 2, 3 and 4. 4 is not included, so the final result of the slice is 1, 2, 3 like this. Instead of calling the slice function always, you can use the shorthand version of slice function, that is slice operators. So inside the square bracket you can pass the same numbers 1 and 4, and between these two values you can pass a colon like this. It will generate the same output as the slice function, as you can see over here. In the indices of the list you can pass negative integers as well. So if I pass a minus 3 to minus 1, this indicates that I want to slice the list from third last element to the last element. So in this list, the third last element is 5 and the last element is 7. So, and remember, this ending value is not included anytime. So the final list that is generated is 5, 6. If we pass nothing as the start value and we pass the ending value like this slice operator will assume that the starting value is 0. As you can see, 0, 1, 2 and 3. 4 is not included again. Similarly, if you omit the last ending value, so this slice object contains elements from index 4 till the end of the list. Slice operators are very intelligent in the sense that if we pass an integer, an index, which is out of the bounds of the list valid index, suppose we pass an index of 10, as you can see there is no index 10 present in this list. Even though we are passing an invalid index, still it will round this. It will take the minimum of this number and the entire length of the list and then proceed with this logic. So even though we have passed 10, it will reduce this 10 to 8, which is the length of this list, and the final list starts with 0 because the default starting value is 0 and the ending value is reduced to 7. Similarly, if we pass negative 20 as the starting value and default ending value, this will again select the maximum of this number and the first index, that is 0. So the final slice object that is returned is 0 to the end of the list, and thus it is the entire list. We have seen the default starting values and default ending values. What if we don't pass any of these numbers, empty start value and empty end value? In that case, the default start value is start element and the default end element is the final element. So it will print the entire list again. This notation is very common to create copies of the list, because it generates a copy of the original entire list. So in all these slice operator functions, we have seen that the default step value, that is the amount that indices increment, is 1 by default. So we can change that by passing 3 integers. So if I pass 1, 6 and 2, that means we want to start at index 1, end at 6 and take a step of 2. So this will be the final result. 1, 3 and 5. 6 or higher numbers are not included, so this will be 135. Now the default start values and default end values will change if we pass a negative integer as the third value, that is the step value. So if we pass default start and default end and pass a negative integer, negative step, that means we want the slice object to be reversed of the original. So the default start value will now become the ending value, the default end value will become the first value, and the step will be taken -1, that is it will go backwards like this, 7 to 0. Even with the negative step values, you can change the default step value by -1 to -2 as well. So it will start with 7. The default start value of negative steps is the last element. It will go backwards to, it will go backwards with 2 steps and terminate at the first element. Slice function may not be that useful for common usage, but slice operators definitely are. You can use this to iterate through a given list in a very flexible way. You can use this to reverse an iterable. You can do a lot of things by this slice function. The next function is the sorted function. This function takes a mandatory parameter which should be an iterable. So I will call the sorted function and pass a list of strings, say Python Aditya and Brainy Things, and if I run this, this will sort the string elements by the default alphabetical order, because strings are sorted using the alphabetical order. Note that this function always returns a list regardless of the type of iterable passed to this function. Now this list is sorted according to alphabetical order, but we can change the comparison criteria with which sorting comparison is done by passing the key argument to the sorted function. So I will copy this and pass the second optional parameter key equal to, and we will pass the function name. In this case we will pass the length, that is we want the shorter strings to be first inside the final list and longer strings at the end of the list. So if we pass just length function, if we run this, we will get Python, Aditya and Brainy Things. The shorter strings are behind and the longer strings are ahead. Note that Python and Aditya strings were both of length 6. So how this tie is broken? So in the case of tie, the elements that are first will always win. So in this case, Python and Aditya were both of length 6, but in the original list Python was first, so in the final list also Python will be first. This function also takes one more optional parameter, which is the reverse. So if we pass a true value to this reverse function, it will reverse the comparison criteria. Note that this is not equivalent to say sorted and then reversing the final list. These both lists will be different in the cases of tie. When we pass reverse equal to true, still the tiebreaker condition will remain the same, that is the first elements in the original list will come first in the final list as well, even if we have reverse equal to true. When we sort this list by normal criteria and then reverse it, the tiebreaker criteria is not maintained. This means that sorted function is stable in nature. Sorting is the fundamental of the algorithm section. Sorting is used in the majority of applications. You can sort the search results of online shopping sites based on the prices. You can sort the YouTube search results based on the upload date, and so on. Sorting is everywhere, and Python makes this operation available as a built-in function, which makes this very easy to use. The next function is the static function. To demonstrate this, let's create a custom class, myClass, and we will define a function inside this class and we will just return hello. And to make this function a static function, we will use the same name of the function and call the static method function and pass the same name of function again. This will transform this function to a static function. Now I can use myClass.f without creating an object of this class, and it will return me hello. Static methods belong to the class and not to the instance. If called with an instance, the instance will be ignored and its class will be used. Static methods are similar to class methods that we covered previously in this series. The only difference is that class methods take their own class as its first parameter, and thus class methods can access the class attributes. Static method does not take this parameter, and thus even after inheritance, the static method will work the same. But the class method after inheritance will differ if the class attributes accessed by this class method is changed in the child class. Instead of calling the static method function, you can use a class decorator @static method like this to convert a function to a static method. The output will remain same. Static functions are the same as the static methods of Java and C++ languages. These methods can be used in factory design patterns to control the instantiation. These methods can be used where the function does not depend on the instance. These methods should be used instead of class methods when you want the same behavior of the function even after inheritance. The next function is the string function. This function, if called without any arguments, it will return an empty string like this. But the major use of this function is to convert different data types to string type. So I can convert an integer to a string, a boolean to a string. I can also convert a list to a string like this. You can pass any object to the string function and it will convert it to a string class. You can also pass a custom class object which will have the _string function defined to control what is returned by the string function. So I will create a custom class, myClass, and inside this myClass I will define the _string function with just self parameter, and I will return any string that depends on the logic of this class that you are implementing. In this case, I will just return a constant string, myClass string. And now if I call the string function and pass the object of the myClass class, it will return the string that we told to return from the _string. This _string is also useful if you are using objects in print function, because the parameters of the print function are converted to string and then printed. If we pass bytes or byte array type to this function, we have the option to mention its encoding and the error handling method. So I will call the string function and pass the bytes object ABC. We have two optional parameters, encoding and error. So in this case I will pass encoding equal to UTF-8. You can also pass error equal to something. In this case I will just keep it default. This will convert this byte stream to a string using this encoding. The next function is the sum function. As the name suggests, it returns the sum of the values that are passed to this function. So we can pass any type of iterable to this function. So I will call the sum function and pass an iterable 1, 5, 3 and 2, just random values, and it will return me the sum of all the elements present inside this list. Normally the elements of this iterable should be of numeric type. There is an optional parameter to this function which is the starting value of the sum, which by default is 0. Thus by default the sum result is initialized to 0 and then each element is added to this sum result. If we pass the start parameter, the sum result will be initialized to that value. So I will pass the second parameter as 5. In this case the sum result is initialized to 5, then 1 is added to it, then 5 is added to it, 3 is added to it, and the entire result is 16. This is equivalent to sum of 1, 3, 5, 3 and 2 plus 5. Sum function is very simple yet very useful in many applications. Data science applications require totaling of the values of a column, calculating the mean requires the sum of values, and there are many more functions where sum function is used. The next function is the super function. This function is useful when we have inheritance of classes and the child class has overridden the parent method. So let's create this scenario. I will create a parent class and I will define a function inside this, self, and inside this I will print parent class like this. Now I will create a child class that will inherit from the parent class and it will override the parent class's f function. So I will again create a f function, which means we are overriding the parent's f function, and inside this overridden function I will print a string of child class. Now if I create an object of this child class and call the f function of this child object, it will print the child class, because naturally we have overridden the parent function and so parent function is not called anywhere. But in some cases, child class may want to extend the functionality and not completely override it like this. The child function may want to access the original parent function. To do that, super function can be used, which delegates the call to the parent function super, and then we can use the dot operator and call the parent function. So parent's function is f, and if we run this again, super f calls the parent's f function, and so parent class is being printed, and then normal execution of the child class can be continued. So it also prints child class. This function also takes optional parameters type and object or type. The object or type determines the method resolution order to be searched. The search starts from the class right after the type. This use case is not used that much, so I'm not including them in this video, but you can read more about them in the documentation, which I have linked in the description. Super function is useful in some object-oriented applications where the functionalities are altered by making use of the original result and not completely rewriting the function again. So if you get such a similar use case, then you should remember that you can use super function. So these were all the built-in functions that start with letter S. If you ended up liking this video, please press that like button, comment any feedback that you have for this video or this channel, share this video with your friends. The code that I write in all my videos of this channel is available in my GitHub profile, whose link is in the description. You can connect to me via LinkedIn, whose link is again in the description, and I will see you in the next video.